If you clicked on this video, then I am willing to bet that you are a Christian who wants to improve your own worldview. If that's you, then I'm very happy that you clicked on this video today, because today I want to provide 4 book recommendations that are going to help you start your journey onto mastering your Christian worldview. If you're new here, then hello, my name is Riley and this is Beyond Belief, a YouTube channel I started to help people improve their own Christian worldview, but also to help myself improve my worldview along the way. I hope you'll stick around and watch this video, and if you do, at the end, just please let me know what you think. I'm always trying to improve. But with that, I'm not going to talk for too long. Let's just get straight into these book recommendations. Before we get into the specific book recommendations I have today, though, I need to make a very quick preface. When I think about how we are to master our general Christian worldview, it comes down to 5 different categories. Those are your worldview in general and your defense of it, your theology, your philosophy, your history, and your interpretation. All of these are very important. I'll explain more of them in depth as we get to the book recommendations that are centered around these categories. But with that, let's actually get into the first book recommendation I have here. So the first book I would recommend to somebody who's wanting to start their journey of mastering their Christian worldview is going to be The Reason for God by Timothy Keller. So this book is really going to fit into that general worldview that I've mentioned at first, but also into theology and partly into philosophy. It actually gets into 3 categories, honestly. But really what this book is a great introduction into how the Christian worldview functions practically. And there's another book that's coming up next that I'm going to get into. But for now, I just want to focus on the reasons this book is so popular and why it's so highly recommended. I think that a lot of people like this book because honestly, it is very down to earth. It is not perfect, but that almost makes it more enjoyable in some ways. You see, what's interesting about this book is it is all centered around real conversations that Timothy Keller has had or situations he was put in. And so, in all reality, it is actually centered in being put just in the middle of the Christian worldview. It's been thrust there, and that's the center of where this book has been around. This is all stuff that Christians are going to face, but also it's answers to tough questions. It's theology, it's philosophy, but more practical theology that people sometimes argue is a separation from more analytical philosophy. Really, what's interesting is that it does all of this in a very simple manner that's easy to distill and easy for somebody who's brand new to Christianity or into deeper studies of Christianity to read. There's a fantastic chapter in this book. It's chapter 10. It's the problem of sin, where Timothy Keller goes into an in-depth study of sin. And personally, for me, that's my favorite chapter. I wanted to include my favorite section of this book because honestly, this book is worth buying and reading just for chapter 10. It's a very good chapter in my opinion, and I would highly recommend it to every single Christian. But with that, those are the reasons I'd recommend this book. There's going to be more, but it kind of ties into this next book as well. So for now, The Reason for God is a very good start for trying to master your Christian worldview. The next book I have is a very basic one, so don't yell at me, but it's very basic and recommended a lot for a reason. That is Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. There is nothing I can say about Mere Christianity that hasn't been said thousands of times already. It's a fantastic book, and it's a book that every Christian should read. The way C.S. Lewis manages to distill down the core tenets of Christianity and explain them so thoroughly and in such a beautiful way is really something to behold and something that everybody really should experience. This book is really going to fit into that general worldview sense as well, just like The Reason for God. But really, it's also going to get deep into philosophy and theology as well. But although it gets deep into it, it managed to keep it at a popular level so that anybody can understand it. I would recommend reading The Reason for God first, because if you're brand new to reading stuff like this is going to be a bit tougher of a read. I know people who have read their entire life who have never read C.S. Lewis, though, and they pick up a Mere Christianity and they can't get past the first couple chapters because he writes in such a unique way. So please don't pick this book up right away, read it, get discouraged. Go read The Reason for God and other such works if you can't read Mere Christianity right away, and I promise you will be able to come back and read Mere Christianity. And when you do so, you are going to be happy that you did. This is amazing. It gets into apologetics, philosophy, theology, as I said, a general worldview. It goes into all of these mere Christianity, these core doctrines and explains them so thoroughly that it really is going to help you as you develop your worldview. And when you want to spread the gospel, when you want to spread your worldview, when you want to help others, there's so much in this book that can be of such a great help and maybe answer some questions that you've been having for a while. So yes, of course, highly recommend C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. Every Christian should read it, and I hope that you will. All right, this next book is going to be one that we probably aren't going to see on many lists. You may see Mere Christianity and The Reason for God on lists of recommended reading for people who want to get into this type of stuff. But this next one, I bet you have not seen yet. The book I'm talking about here is Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes by Randolph Richards and Brandon O'Brien. This book is going to fit into that interpretation side of the tenets of mastering your Christian worldview. This book is fantastic for exposing how our Western presuppositions completely change how we interpret Scripture. We have to remember that Scripture is not a Western work. It's an ancient Near Eastern, an A&E work. So being that that's the case, we have to remember, if we impart our own Western worldview onto Scripture, we're going to come away with completely different interpretations than what the original writers actually intended. There's not too much I can say about this book other than you have to remember when we're interpreting Scripture to be very careful. And this book will show you why. I don't want to do a huge overview of it. I've done a couple videos on my channel about this book. If you want to go check those out, I may eventually finish that series, but honestly, when I was making the videos about the book, I was just realizing, man, people just got to read this book for themselves. And when you do, you will not be disappointed. I do want to make it very clear. I do not agree with everything in this book. I do believe that a majority of it is very true, but there are a few instances where things are taken too far, where I feel like a modern Eastern worldview is put onto the Bible by them and not an ancient Near Eastern one. But regardless, that's not a reason that you shouldn't pick it up and read it. You absolutely should, and I would highly recommend Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes. All right, and on to the final book. I'm very excited to bring this one because I just finished it recently, and it was an amazing read that I want to share with everybody, and that is 2,000 Years of Christ's Power by Nick Needham. And very specifically, this is the first volume, which is the Age of the Early Church Fathers. This book is fantastic. This is going to fit into that history portion. I don't want to go into why I think it's important to master church history to master your Christian worldview. I think that's pretty self-evident. Some people don't think it's useful at all. I think it's very useful. I may make a video on that in the future, but suffice to say, that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to make a defense of why church history is important. I'm here to bring you about why this book specifically is a good intro to church history. This book is written in a very academic style, and that may sound bad for an introduction. But what's really interesting is Nick Needham has managed to blend an academic rigor with a popular level approach. And when you come away from reading this, you'll realize that Nick Needham managed to write this in a way that is incredibly engaging. But alongside that engagement, you are learning a lot. And something I really liked about this book that is very hard to typically find in church history works is that it is incredibly unbiased. Now, when I say incredibly unbiased, I didn't say that it is completely lacking of bias. However, it is very clear that there are moments when Nick Needham, who is a Baptist, could have absolutely dunked on views that are opposing to his, but he didn't. He presented everything very honestly and from a very neutral perspective, which was really surprising. And to make sure I wasn't going crazy about this and that actually other people also thought this, I actually managed to find Catholic subreddits saying, yeah, you should read that book because honestly, he made us look not too bad because he was honest with it. The big problem that some people have when they're approaching church history is that they're expecting the church history to match up with the situation or denomination or paradigm they're already in. I know this is a lot more true than a lot of people think. And being that that's the case, they go for something that is biased towards their perspective. Or maybe they come away with an interpretation that wasn't meant by the author. But what's really good about this book is it really doesn't allow you to do that. Now, there are obviously sections where you can see some bias shine through, or you could see some preference shine through. But regardless of that, this has been quite possibly the most neutral work on church history I have read yet. It isn't perfect though. There's a very clear thing I want to make known. I'm probably going to do a review on this book at some point, but one minor complaint I do have is sometimes it can get too far into Roman history and not enough into church history. What I mean by that is, yes, Rome was incredibly important for early Christianity. I don't doubt that, and I don't think anybody does. But there was parts where it seemed like, well, we didn't really need to learn that. And for me personally, when I'm reading a book for a very specific purpose, I only want stuff for that purpose. And I will say that most of it does tie back into Christianity, and so I'm not that upset about it. But there were some points where I was like, well, we could have left that out and saved a couple of pages, you know what I mean? But regardless, if you're not going to pick up this specific book on church history, that's fine. But please do pick up something entry level into church history. It's very, very important. There are a lot of good works. Everett Ferguson has a good book on church history as well. I've read a few chapters of it on a preview, but I want to actually buy it and read it physically as well because so far it's been really good. So Everett Ferguson's works are also good. But personally, I want to only chiefly recommend something I've read fully through, and so that will be this book right here. And with that, those are the 4 books I have today. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Again, I'm going to read out the books one more time. They are The Reason for God by Timothy Keller, Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes by Randolph Richards and Brandon O'Brien, and 2,000 Years of Christ's Power, specifically here the first volume by Nick Needham. I promise if you go in to read these books, you will not be disappointed. I definitely would bring a pen, a pencil, a marker, a highlighter, whatever you want into reading these books though, because I'm sure you're going to be one underlining, mark, and taking notes. And if you're interested in how to remember what you read better, I have a video on my channel where I go over some tips and tricks. So if you're interested, you can find that, and I'll link it in the description below. And with that, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any tips for me, any tricks, any advice, please leave them in the comments below. I would really like to read it. But regardless, again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a blessed day.